Influential African Americans. Today, Diversity Club would like to introduce you to some people who played a role in the advancement of African Americans. Many of these people you might not know, and some you might. The goal of this video is to try and expand your knowledge of the people who have impacted the history of African Americans. It began as a way of remembering important people and events in the history of the African diaspora. The purpose of Black History Month is to make all Americans aware of the struggle for freedom and equal opportunity. It's a time to celebrate the many achievements of African Americans in every field, from science and the arts to politics and religion. Black History Month has its origins in 1915 when Dr. Carter G. Woodson founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. Through this organization, he initiated the first Negro History Week in February 1926. This is because it included the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, who were two key figures in the history of African Americans. Later, in 1976, they expanded it to Black History Month, and President Ford issued the first message on the observance of Black History Month that year. In 1986, Congress passed a law which designated February 1986 as National Black Afro-American History Month. Dr. Rebecca Lee Crumpler was the first African-American female doctor in the U.S. After attending the West Newton English and Classics School, she worked as a nurse for 8 years until applying to medical school in 1860, which is where she was accepted and graduated 4 years later. Toni Morrison was a writer known for her books The Bluest Eye, Songs of Solomon, and Beloved. Beloved won the Pulitzer Prize in 1988. She became the first Black woman to be awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1993. Here's a snippet of her book, Beloved.
Satha was trying to make up for the handsaw. Beloved was making her pay for it. But there would never be an end to that. And seeing her mother diminished, shamed and infuriated her. Yet she knew Satha's greatest fear was the same one Denver had in the beginning, that Beloved might leave.
Robert Abbott was a lawyer and newspaper publisher. In 1905, he founded the Chicago Defender. The paper attacked racial injustice, particularly lynching in the South. It made Abbott one of the first African-American self-made millionaires. Most people know about Rosa Parks, but many don't know that Claudette Colvin came before her. She was arrested on March 2, 1955 at the age of 15 after refusing to give up her seat to a white woman on a crowded and segregated bus.
I had this feeling come over me. It felt like Harriet Tubman was holding me down, hands were holding me down on one shoulder, and Sojourner Truth hands were holding me down on another shoulder. And I was glued to the seat, and I could hear the white passioners saying, "She gotta move, she gotta move, that's the law, she gotta move." And I felt like this is my time to take a stand for justice.
However, about 10 years before Claudette, a woman named Irene Amos Morgan Kirkcaldy did the same thing. On July 16, 1944, Kirkcaldy stood up to police officers stating that she wouldn't give up her seat to a white couple. She was arrested in Virginia and charged with resisting arrest and violating Virginia's Jim Crow transit laws. Morgan pled guilty to the charge of resisting arrest, but refused to plead guilty for violating Jim Crow laws. The Virginia Supreme Court ruled her in violation of the law, so she took her case to the U.S. Supreme Court. This is where the court ruled in her favor that enforcing Virginia's state laws on interstate buses was unconstitutional. Jane Bolin was the first African-American woman to be a graduate of Yale Law School and judge in the U.S. One major change she made was the assignment of probation officers to cases without regard for race or religion. Dorothy Height was a civil rights and women's rights activist. She mainly focused on unemployment, illiteracy, and voter awareness. Along with this, she advocated for ending the lynching of African Americans and restructuring the criminal justice system. Coretta Scott King was an advocate for African American equality. She was a leader for the civil rights movement in the 60s. King also supported several women's rights causes and traveled internationally, lecturing about racism and economic issues in the U.S. and abroad.
In trying to perform this awesome task, which my late husband would have done with great ease, I feel a deep sense of inadequacy. Nonetheless, the confidence and faith which you have placed in me is a source of encouragement and inspiration. In these days when young people want so earnestly to make their own decisions,
Daisy Bates was a civil rights activist who played an important part in the integration of the Little Rock Nine. Her home became the organizing and strategy center for them. Every day for the first year of school, she walked the Little Rock Nine to school. Bayard was MLK Jr.'s advisor. He heavily advocated for gay rights and the broader conversation of civil rights. He was known and credited for having shared his stance on the topic of nonviolence with MLK Jr. Here's a snippet of one of his speeches.
I want no human being to die or to be brutalized, because I thoroughly believe that this struggle can be won without brutalization.
Marie Brown created the first home security system in closed-circuit TV. The invention was inspired by the security risks and dangers she faced in her hometown. The invention laid the foundation for future security systems, with features like remote-controlled door and locks. Sister Rosetta Tharpe rose to fame with her electric, sanctified sound. She influenced a whole new genre of music, which would later become known as rock and roll. Here's one of her songs.
This train is a clean train. Everybody ride it in Jesus' name. This train is a clean train. This train.
Ethel Waters became one of the most vibrant and versatile performers, appearing on Broadway and movies and nightclubs. Her vocals and performance style would go on to influence modern jazz singers. Here's a snippet from one of her shows.
In their thighs, rhythm in their feet, in their lips and in their eyes. Where do highbrows find that kind of love that satisfies? Underneath our Harlem moon.
Miss Major Griffin Gracie is a transgender woman and activist at the forefront of the fight for trans rights. In 2005, Miss Major joined San Francisco-based Transgender Variant Intersex Justice Project to help lead the group's efforts advocating for incarcerated trans women. Marsha P. Johnson was known as an outspoken advocate for gay rights. She was a prominent figure in the Stonewall Uprising of 1969. She helped co-found the Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, which committed to supporting transgender youth experiencing homelessness. Booker T. Washington was one of the most influential African Americans at the turn of the century. He founded Tuskegee Normal and Industrial Institute and the National Negro Business League. He championed education, economic progress, and social equality. Thank you for watching. Happy Black History Month.